Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. We are going through Bhagavad Gita. We are on chapter 10 and we are at verse 31. So Ambika, if you could read verse 31.
Pavan am I among purifiers, Rama among the men of weapons, among the fishes I am Makkara, the alligator, among the streams the Ganga am I.
Thank you. Yogeshwar?
Pavana pavatamasmi Rama shastrabhritamaham Jashanam makaraschasmi srotasamasmi janhavi. Out of all the purifiers, I am wind. In the context, what we can see here is we have seen that Krishna has already mentioned that I am Marichi out of all the wind. Now, this is another context because this is among purifiers. Because purifiers, we can put water as a purifier, wind as a purifier, the sun also purifies. So out of all the purifiers, I am wind. Now, one thing to put into context is wind is ever flowing. It never stops flowing. Water can stop flowing. And you see, one thing with water, when it stops flowing, it becomes mud. It gathers all the dirt within itself if it stops flowing. But wind is one thing that never stops flowing. And by that fact that it never stops flowing, it is always pure. It always purifies whatever it comes in contact with. And that one element also is put into context in the way that in previous days, sannyasis were supposed to be always flowing. Like we know the story of Narada, he is not supposed to stay in one place for more than 20 minutes. So the same way, sannyasis are not supposed to stay in one place for more than 2 or 3 days. That's the max. After that, you change the place. So the way that you're supposed to change the place, one, that you don't cling onto anything. You're not attached to anything. When you're not attached to anything, that's when you can purify, even as a person. One, when you're not attached, you yourself, you're pure. And you also purify whoever you come in contact with. So that's how the life of sannyasis was supposed to be. And they were supposed to ask for alms, which bhiksha. They were supposed to ask for alms from different places every day, not from one place. You know what happens is when you ask from one place every day, you may get into attachment with that person. Maybe if he's a rich person, you may start going to him again and again because you know you're going to get your alms from them, rather than going everywhere. And when you go everywhere, there's a higher potentiality for you to reach more people, for you to take more people onto the path of enlightenment, rather than just being in one place. So once you've reached enlightenment, what is supposed to be done is you flow like how wind flows. You just flow. And another thing is flowing with the flow of the ultimate. When you flow with the flow of the ultimate, you are intimately pure and you also purify whoever you come in contact with. And that is the whole essence of enlightenment. You should flow with that flow. You should not go opposite it, or you should not go sideways. You should just be in the flow. One normal example that is given is about the river. You should go with the flow of the river and not go opposite the river. You want to say something, Shrikant?
Yes, I mean, I really like this. So once you're done talking about this, before you go to the next point, I would like to make a comment. Go ahead.
Sure. And another great example that is given is the flag. Like, you know, we normally have a dwaja, like it's called a flag, on top of every temple. So that flag, what it represents is go with the flow. The flag always goes with the flow of the wind. If the wind flows east, it will go east. If it even deviates 1 degree, it will also deviate 1 degree as well. So the same thing, you're supposed to go with the flow of the ultimate, like how the ultimate wants the whole of you to flow, even within yourself and within the whole world. So once you start flowing in that way, you are pure and you start purifying other people in the same way. Go on,
Wow.
Shrikant.
Wow. Thank you. I really like this, this line, the making the connection between this flowing nature of basically the wind. The whole of the world is its domain, and it goes where it will, and it goes without stopping. It keeps moving. And what it does is that it embraces everything. It's not focused, it doesn't remain one. The analogy that you gave between the standing water and flowing water is a very good one. It's like when there is a pond and where there is no movement in the pond, all kinds of things grow there. All kinds of bad things grow there. Whereas if it's flowing water, it keeps on purifying itself as it goes, and it purifies things that it comes in contact with. So the idea of the connection between flowing nature, of not getting attached. So again, the point about not getting attached captures that very well. And so it's a way of looking at it, of saying, of just local movement, that you're moving all the time. You are not attached to one thing. And it is a way of actually acknowledging that this Tao, this Brahma is there everywhere, and that you don't need to hold on to any particular thing in order to get it. It's the whole of the universe is your domain, and the domain of Brahma. So beautifully put. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Also, another point that normally we think that when we're at the peripheral, we are like there's a higher range of different things we can do. But it is not true, because at the peripheral, we're clinging to so many things. While when we're at the center, by the analogy of the center and the peripheral, when we're at the center, what happens is we are just flowing with the flow. Rather than going against the flow or swimming sideways, we are with the flow when you're at the center, because you have nothing to cling to on the peripheral. Like, you don't want anything at the peripheral, so you're just there and you can go with the flow. Nothing will harm you in going with the flow. So in that way as well, you should always be flowing. Rama Shastra Bhritamaham. Out of all those who carry weapons, I am Rama. So the context that is brought in here is even those who carry weapons. Yeah? If you're like Rama, if you are Rama, then you're the ultimate. You can see the ultimate within them. For example, one thing that I would like to say here is, you see, it's also, yesterday I talked about this point that we can keep Krishna with Radhika ji, or we can keep Krishna with Lakshmi, and we still bow down. Yeah, because we know the ultimate masculine and the ultimate feminine is in there. Now, it's also another point here whereby we can see Ram, and we can give a weapon in his hands, and we can give him the bows and his back, and we can still bow down to him. Yeah? It signifies a lot if you can see that context. Because normally what we like to see is God or the ultimate will have a favoring hand over his people, or will just have open hands, something like that. Yeah, not carrying weapons at least. But how you can signify the ultimate, and ultimate having weapons as well. Yeah, you can have a murti of Rama carrying weapons, Sita besides him, and he is carrying weapons. Yeah, and then you also, in a way, I can call it that you have the guts to bow down. Yeah, and you have that benevolence in you. You bow down to Rama. So that context as well, you should take, that it is not a small thing that in the Indian culture someone can bow down to Rama. And another way to put it as well is that normally you would wish that if it is the ultimate, it should not need weapons to carry out any activity. It should just have great powers, like maybe fire coming out of his hands or something, you know, something superficial like that. But when we see Rama with his weapons, and what he did with his weapons is he went all the way from about the north or the middle of India to the south, all the way to the south, to Lanka, which in today's terms it's called Sri Lanka. So he went all the way there for his wife, Sita. He fought with Ravana for his wife Sita. Yes, we know that. And then what happened is, normally when we fight with weapons, or when we have a war, what happens is we have all those we want to know the enemy so well. Sometimes we get all the negative aspects of the enemy. Yeah, because we know them, we know all their tricks. We want to beat them in their own game. So we know all their aspects. And certainly what happens is we get their gunas, we get their qualities. We don't know about it, but what happens is we get their trickeriness. We get those subtle qualities that the enemy has into ourselves. Now, what I believe is Ravan dying at the hands of Rama is not such a big thing. Yeah, because the big thing is Ram fighting with Ravana and Ravana's qualities not coming into Rama. That is greater, because you can have the most elegant person or the one who has the most strength, and he will fight anyone and anyone will be dead in front of him. That's not the point. The point is you fight. You have a war with your enemy. You use all the tricks that the enemy uses. You beat him in his own game, but still, you as a person, you as Atman, Brahma, you do not change. You stay as you are, not getting the qualities of the enemy, but staying who you are. And oh yeah, go on.
Yeah. So what, Charles, what we are going to do is that we will open it up for comments and questions as soon as we are done with the verse. Okay, so it's verse by verse. So I want to make one comment from, I see it in addition to everything you said, I see it from a slightly different angle. I'm saying this is Rama. I'm Ram amongst warriors. See, what happens is that normally when you see somebody with weapons, etc., you would be concerned. You would say, okay, what kind of damage you can, but in case of Ram, you think of Ram with weapons, you are actually very happy. You have no concern whatsoever, because the righteousness is there. So he's like a person who is able to hold tremendous destructive power with full morality, which is inbuilt. So your reaction to somebody like that is dramatically different than other people. Go ahead.
Yes, and then another point I would like to point out is, yeah, they fought with Ravana and then Sita came back. And then one interesting point in Ram's life was that he moved all the way from North India or Central India to South India into Sri Lanka just to get Ram, yeah, just to get Sita as his beloved wife. Now, another point to note here is he was a king, and he was the king of the greatest state at that time. Now, he could have gotten so many other queens for himself, and it was a trend at that time. Like kings will get so many queens for himself. If not, if he didn't want so many, maybe he will just get one other queen. Yeah, instead of going all the way down. So it shows the love that somebody can show towards Sita. And another aspect of this is also when he comes back with Sita to his, because already he has done Agni Pariksha. And then there is also this aspect of some person in his kingdom talks about Sita in another way, that if Sita has stayed in Ravana's place for all this time, Ram can bring her back and keep her. But I cannot keep my wife if she goes even one day out. Yeah? So that sort of tone, yeah, you can think of it as a tone, but how I feel it is that Rama is looking at the integrity of his kingdom and how the kingdom looks at Sita, not just for fame, yeah, but Ram now takes Sita to a Rishi's place, who is Valmiki, who wrote Ramayana. So Ram takes Sita to the Rishi's place, and there, first of all, Sita is carrying twins in her womb while this is going on. Yes, and Rama knows that Sita has at least a baby in her womb. If he doesn't know twins, at least he knows she has a baby in her womb. Then he tells Lakshman, who is his brother, younger brother, to take Sita to Valmiki's ashram while she has the heir of his kingdom. That's not seen in any other place. Like putting the kingdom's respect over your own beloved or your own life is not seen, because you would think that Ram does not love his wife, but going all the way down to Sri Lanka just to get his wife back, it's not a small thing. And fighting with Ravana, who is he was the greatest at that time. Whether you call it wealth, weaponry, or ships at that time, all he had. And his brother was Kuber. So he was the wealthiest. Nobody could beat him in wealth. And when you have wealth, you have all the weapons you need. So beating such a person, and he knew what was at stake, because beating such a person was not easy. Now, when this comes, when such a situation comes, he goes on to leave Sita into Valmiki's ashram and does not even see his heir's face for about 12, 15 years down the line, when the Love and Kush, who were Rama's son, they are about 12 or 15 years of age. That's when Ram sees them for the first time. And that's not also by Ram's wish. It is because there is this yajna that Rama does. And you see how much Rama loves his wife is in yajnas, normally they're supposed to sit in a pair, husband, wife. And in Indian culture, wife is called as Ardhangani, meaning she is half your body. She is part of your body. So when you sit in a yajna, you're supposed to sit with your wife. In any puja or in any yajna you sit in, even for the ultimate, you're supposed to sit with your wife. You're not supposed to sit alone. So what Rama did is, for each and every yajna he did, he created a gold image, not just an image, I don't know, not just a portrait, yeah, but a golden, I've forgotten the name, statue, yes, yes, a golden statue of Sita. In each and every yajna he does. And each and every yajna has a different golden statue of Sita. He made several of golden statues of Sita. You can see the love that he has towards Sita in that way. And in another aspect, all the love is there. And then he goes on to take the integrity of his kingdom above his own personal life, above his own beloved. Now, such a thing to do, yeah, even if we put it in today's context, if we want to show love towards our family, we'll keep them first. Yes, that's what we should do. But if you are at such a high state level, or maybe you have that power and you are the ruler of so many people, then the question is, would you put the kingdom first before your family? And that question is really important. That's what we want our leaders to do, to put the state in front first before themselves or their own families. And the problems that arise about statesmen or the leaders of maybe even previous leaders or leaders today, what happens is they put themselves and the lives or their family first, rather than their kingdom first, or rather than the state first. So Rama shows all these different qualities, subtle. Like you may feel that he may not have loved his wife, that's why he let him out. But look at the context of the story. Yeah, and you'll see that he loved his wife even more than anyone could love his wife right now. But still, he can put the kingdom up in front before his own family or his own life. So all those subtle qualities that Rama has, it allows you to bow down to a person who has weapons, not because of fear, not at all because of fear, but because you can love him, because you can respect him in his own accord, with his qualities. Do you want to say something, Shrika? Okay. So, Jashana Makaras Chasmi. Out of all those that stay in water, yeah, normally we just call them fish. So here they've said Jashana. So out of all those who stay in water, I am Makkara. Now, what Makkara is translated into in today's context, because what Sanskrit has as Amarkosh, which is Sanskrit's dictionary, like the most dated dictionary in Sanskrit, what that has is there are different types of animals that eat other fish, and one of them is Makkara. So there are different ways of translating Makkara. Some translate it directly to a crocodile, others translate Makkara to a whale. Yeah? So there are different ways of translating this, even in today's context, whereby what happens in Sanskrit is it may be, well, that a whale was not discovered at that time. It could be. And that's what some people use as context for putting it as a crocodile, right? Because crocodiles were there from that time and they were known. So there are different contexts of putting this, but just to know that what the qualities of Makkara are said in the dictionaries of Sanskrit. So debating about what Makkara is not the main thing. The main thing is the qualities that Makkara has. So one of the qualities that the dictionaries say of Sanskrit, major qualities, is yes, it eats other fish, it eats other animals that stay in the water. But one subtle quality it has is it never eats if it doesn't need to. It only eats when it's hungry. It only eats for its needs. So one aspect here we could see is needs, like basic needs should be, and only basic needs, not luxurious needs. When our desires catch up with us and then we want so much more. When our attachments catch up with us and then we want so much more. But what the qualities of Makkara show us here is stay content with your basic needs. If you have your basic needs, you're good to go. And if you can see such, even in the most basic person or in the most basic water animal, water life, that it's content with its needs. It does not eat up any other animal because it's just come in the territory. Like I talked about the lion yesterday. But it only eats up when it's hungry. And that's a subtle quality. If we think in our own lives, we may think that's just fine, like because it eats for food. But let's talk about our own lives. We're always thinking about the future and how we can collect more money or we can collect more fame. And in a way, we can see that when we want to collect fame, when we want more fame among our peers or among people who know us, what is happening is we are going above our basic needs. And what is killing our humanity or deteriorating our humanity is such things that are above our basic needs. When we are in our basic needs, we are conserving our humanity. But when we are going above our basic needs into luxurious needs or things like fame or collecting so much money, like collecting money is not a problem, but collecting so much money, even more than you need, yes? If it comes upon you, that's not a problem. Like if fame or money comes upon you, that's not a problem. Then you should also know how to deal with it. But wanting it, desiring it, is the problem here. Because when you desire it so much, and then it comes, you do not know how to handle it. You only want more and more. So we can think about these qualities as, they're so subtle that we may miss the point. Like they need basic needs, we also need basic needs. Like animals need basic needs, even humans need basic needs. But what we need to see is they are content with their basic needs. Are we content with our basic needs? And when we are content with our basic needs, is when we will be able to pursue our spiritual life, like our spiritual goals, because all those strings that are pulling us from our attachments or from our luxurious needs will be broken. They'll be deteriorating, and we shall build new strings towards spiritual life. Shrotasamasmi Jhanavi. So you may have noticed, like at the beginning of this, I first said Shro, but then I had to say Srotasam Asmi Jhanavi. Like there's a subtle difference even between sh and sa in Sanskrit. So you have to abide by it. I was first saying Shrotasam, but you can't say that. It's supposed to be Srotasam Asmi Jhanavi. So even those subtle differences make a big difference in pronunciation of Sanskrit. So Srotasam Asmi Jhanavi. Among all the rivers, I am the I don't know how to pronounce it in English, like Ganga, I would say in Hindi.
Yes. In English, it's called Ganges, but you can say Ganga.
Yeah. So Ganga, I am among all the rivers. Now, it is an interesting thing whereby he says, Krishna says, not an ordinary person says, but Krishna says that I am river Ganga out of all the rivers. Now, what the culture of India or what the Rishi Munis, what the sages of India tried to do is build up a place that can absorb all the energy that is being produced by the sages, because we know, even like right now, we are made of energy. Like we also release energy from our bodies using our thoughts, using our emotion states, all that. So we build all these energy waves around us, and they also affect people around us. What the sages of India tried to do at that time is to build those energies. And a certain thing that they noticed is that water is something that can transfer energies at a really high speed rather than normal earth. Like even right now, if we talk about something like science, electricity, like it will flow through water well, like so well, but flowing through earth, it will be really hard. We can have some metals it can pass through, but what happens is then those metals cannot keep the electricity within them. Yeah, but what happens with water, it can transfer the bodily energies so well, and it can conserve energies as well. And one thing that they tried to do at that time is, whoever great sage could be, they tried to do all their different asanas or pranayam or whatever they are doing, the process of enlightenment, they could do it at the riverside of river Ganga. So that's what they tried to do. Now, whenever somebody comes into contact with river Ganga, they will come in immediate contact with any sage who was along the river Ganga, like immediately. And you could not only have one sage at the river Ganga, you would have so many at that time at different places. So you have all these energies at different places along the river. And if at one point in the river you dive in, yes, you get all those energies within you. It's not a small thing if we can think about it, like getting all this positive energy, as we can call it in today's day. But I would not call it positive energy as per se. I would call it like spiritual energy rather than just positive or negative, because this is even higher than that. It's not just positivity in your life, but it's about you going onto the spiritual path. It is about all those energies that are coming onto you. And then, you see, it is both sides. Yeah, you're getting all those energies from Ganga, and then you also being open to those energies. So what happens is, when you're open to those energies, is you can absorb those energies within you. So there's a normal saying that when you go into Ganga, when you dive yourself into Ganga, is all your bad karma or papa, it perishes. So how I view it is, you're supposed to be open when you go into Ganga. Now, what a normal person will do is, for his sins to be perished, he will be open into Ganga. But what I am looking at is not his sins perishing away, but him being open for the reason that he received this energy within himself. Yeah, and that, according to me, is more important than you living out your sins. And that openness, what it brings is that energy within you, like totally. Another aspect that I would like to put in here, so one aspect has been that all the energies are within Ganga. And another aspect is you being open to all those energies. Another thing I would like to put on the table is that, like scientifically, I've also read research about Ganga. What happens is, any other river that you put the water into a bottle and then you keep it. So for any other river, what will happen is that water will become like, there is all this fungus, and it will come into the water and it will settle into the water. So the water will change its color, it will change its qualities. What happens with Ganga, I don't know the real reason with this, but what happens with Ganga is, if you keep that water in a bottle, even though that water is stagnant, remember I said previously that if you keep stagnant water, it will collect all these impurities within itself. But if you keep Ganga's water stagnant within a bottle, if you capture it within a bottle, it doesn't perish, like the qualities don't perish. It keeps as it was. It doesn't bring in fungus within itself. It doesn't bring in any other impurities within itself. It just stays as it is. One thing I could say about it is all these energy waves that we put into spiritually, yeah, into the river previously by all these great sages could be a factor to that. But I don't really know about that. But if something can be put into that context, that it doesn't change its qualities, even though it stays stagnant, and other water is different from this water, then there is some subtle quality. Maybe we are not able to see it, but there is some subtle quality within the water of Ganga that I don't know where it comes from, but those qualities are profound. And what you need to do one time when you come to India is dive yourself in and see what you receive. Like openly dive yourself in and see what you receive. It's an experience rather than just a theological or a mental discourse to do about. When you experience it, then you'll not be able to say no, or you'll not be able to say that there's nothing in the river. So one part is knowing about it, and another part is experiencing it for itself. Then you really know about it.
Wonderful. So I'm going to make one comment, and I'm going to invite everybody to go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to make a comment or ask a question. We want it to be interactive. So Yogeshwar, I want to tell you that when I was in IIT, I had gone for a trek to the Himalayas, and on the way back, I stopped at Haridwar, at Har Ki Pauri, where they have, this is the place to dive into Ganga. So I still remember, I have a memory of that flow. It's a very hard flow of that. But the point that you're making is very deep. It's kind of like be like water, where it connects with the first part of, that I am the wind amongst the purifiers, and then I am the Ganges at the end among the rivers. Ganges am I. Both those are connected. It is the flow. It is kind of you being open. I think I really like the way you put it, like you being open, to the world, to giving up things that you are holding on to, and immersing yourself with the flow of life. And there is a part of it, it's kind of comes from inside, in the sense that it is like your willingness to do that when you're jumping into the diving into the Ganga. Part of it is coming from within you, and part of it is that is part of the tradition, that is part of all of that lore of Ganga, and what Ganga can do, what purifying can do for you, is being presented to you thanks to all your culture and all your upbringing and everything. And that's all there. You're surrounded by people. When you're at Har Ki Pauri, you're surrounded by people who are doing the same thing. hundreds of them who are doing the same thing, who are saying that, okay, I'm ready to give up all my sins, take them away, let them flow away. And that is, we are emotional creatures and we affect each other. Of that, seeing the devotion all around you has an impact on you. So thank you. All right, folks. So any comments, any thoughts, go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. We'll start with Joe. Joe, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to put it together now, and I actually made some of the connections that you had already made, Shrikant, with the connections between wind, water, and the idea of purification within that process. How does this relate to knowledge? And to specifically Jnana Yoga? Does this have a relationship to that or none?
I don't see a direct relation, but Yogesh, go ahead.
Yes, so what Gyan Yoga profoundly says is that your Atman or the Brahman already has all the Jnana within. Like there's nothing to be added on to. The sun is already shining within.
Okay.
What happens with Gyan Yoga is you're not supposed to bring in any knowledge from outside. What it's supposed to be is you're supposed to purify any clouds, any rain clouds that are dark. You're supposed to remove them away. So when you're open in a way, all those rain clouds can go away, and then the sun from within can shine through. So in Gyan Yoga, you should not confuse it with taking in knowledge only. Because Gyan Yoga, the taking in knowledge is only to purify. It's like sweeping away the dirt that is there. So that is the knowledge that you're taking in. It's not that you should not take in knowledge, but that knowledge is not for the Gyan of the Atman. It is like removing all the dirt that is in there. It's like fading away the clouds that are there so that the sun can just shine from within.
Joe, I'm sorry, you saw something that I did not see, and Yogeshwar pointed it out very well, because if you look at the Jnana Yoga, right, the concept of knowledge in Indian context here is different from the concept of knowledge which is prevalent in the modern West. In the modern West, the concept of knowledge is about knowledge of the world. The knowledge that we are talking about here in Jnana Yoga is the knowledge of the center, it is knowledge of your core. And therefore, this purification has everything to do with that knowledge. And what Bhagavad Gita holds is that you are already that. So you are your Atma, you are your center. And what you have is actually excess. It's not just something that you have to gain, because you already have everything, okay, in the center, because you are the center. What you have is you have these impurities, you have attachments to the periphery. You have, so purification, and purification is presented here in both cases in a very different way. It is not kind of giving up in the sense that you don't stop and say, okay, I'm going to be only at the center. No, it is a flow. It is saying that you're flowing freely from the center through the world without stopping anywhere and keeping coming back to the center. So the purification and Jnana Yoga is connected that way. Joe, does that answer
Perfect.
your question?
Yeah, that's exactly kind of where I was kind of thinking with this. And now I have a better understanding of what knowledge means.
Thank you, Joe. Great question. Next up is Ambika.
So the question I have is, with all these purification practices to keep the inner elements free and clear, because it's what's outside is inside and so on. And of course, we've messed up everything else. Are these also the same as Tattva Shuddhi? Because we're dealing with the 5 fingers, which represent the elements too, right?
Okay, Yogeshwar, you don't have to, if it is not directly related to Gita, you don't have to take it. Folks, what we want to do is that this entire range is very large of Indian context, okay? And what we are trying to do is that most of the people here are not familiar with it. So many people will not be able to kind of relate to that. And we don't want to go too far away, because understanding Gita itself is a very tough thing. So so I don't want to go too far from this one. But Ambika, let me ask you, Ambika, what is Tattva Shuddhi? Go ahead and summarize it.
I can't define it, but I've done the practice. I just wondered, because we're talking about purification and we're talking about air, air and water and so on. And we are made of these elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. That's how these fingers are. And so that's how in Ayurveda, the lines are, and every organ is connected. And so when we talk about inner purification, this is what comes up. And I think Yogeshwar had once said that practice is also mentioned in this text. So because we're talking about purification, I asked.
Okay, that is valid to ask, but let's not go into it, because I just, folks, what I want to tell you is that, Indian corpus is very large. It can, just like the Western corpus is very large, Indian corpus is very large. And what we are trying to do is that we are kind of trying to delimit. You're going a little bit here, a little bit there, but there are many, many, many practices, and there are different approaches to practices. It's very, very rich. Okay. So, all right. If there is nothing more, Charles, I don't know whether your question was answered or not. You had a question about Sita. It's answered. You do this if you have answered, or you can unmute and say.
No, I don't believe that it was.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
And I think I understand Yogeshwar's reference to Rama as the great warrior, as the unparalleled warrior, and that Krishna is saying that among warriors, I am Rama, the greatest of all. That makes sense. But then he went on to talk about Rama's relationship with his wife Sita, and his battle with Ravana. And I have only a sketchy
so you can ask a question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, of the Ramayana. I have not read all 16 volumes of the Ramayana, or however many there are, but I do have a sketchy understanding in my own mind of the story, and my understanding is that that Sita was abducted by Ravana, and he tried to have his way with her on multiple occasions, and she refused him, and she was chased, and regardless of how much he tried to to get her to agree to do what he wanted with her, she just wouldn't let it happen. And then of course she was rescued and brought back to her husband. But my recollection of the story is that that Rama actually felt that he just couldn't get out of his mind, out of his head, that somehow or other Ravana had indeed.
No, that's not true. So let's go ahead and ask a question. And so
well, that's my question.
Sure. Okay. Very good.
And my understanding is that eventually he rejected Sita, and that Sita had to go off by herself, and was eventually became a goddess, for on her own.
No. I don't want to do too many misconceptions here.
Yes. Okay.
So let me go ahead and answer. Let me go ahead and answer the question. Okay. So firstly, I want to step back. But the reason I took this question, though it is not directly on Gita, is Ram is an avatar, another avatar, just like Krishna. And it's very interesting. It's always been very interesting to look at Mahabharata and Ramayana. Those are the two great epics. And they have, avatar of Vishnu in both of them. And they are very different from each other. And they illustrate very different things. So I want to raise that question first about how is Ram different? Because Ram, in my understanding, Ram epitomizes virtue. He epitomizes the righteousness at any cost. It's like saying that I will be righteous. I will do what is right all the time. Okay. And regarding Sita, it is very clear when you read Ramayana that Ram had no doubt whatsoever about Sita. No, nothing at all. Okay. But he was righteous and he wanted to always do the right thing. Always do the right thing for everybody. There is a concept called Ramarajya. That means a society which is run according to the right principles. That is called Ramarajya. So it's like society running on right principles is called Ramarajya. That means the kingdom of Ram. So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to say what would be the right thing in the society. And that's how he's thinking of all of these issues. The other thing is that when you're trying to understand a context of another culture, another time, you have to put yourself in their shoes, in their context, which is typically very different from the way in which modern people think. So Ram is thinking in a way which is very different. This is not just about Ram or about Indian culture. If you're trying to understand the actions of Achilles in the Trojan War, he does a whole bunch of things, and you cannot understand them unless you put yourself, you understand the ethos of the Greek mind and what does being courageous, being virtuous meant to a Greek. So similarly, you have to kind of understand what being righteous meant in this context. So that's what I would say. But the question that I would ask Yogeshwar is the distinction. Well, how is Ram different from Krishna? We've been talking a lot about Krishna and learning a lot about Krishna. How is Ram different?
Yeah, so sorry for the background, if there's any noise.
No problem.
Okay, yeah. So one thing that I would like to point out is Rama is called Maryada Purushottama, meaning like he is known for his virtues. And Purushottama means the highest or the greatest among all men. So Maryada, the one who is the highest among all men because of his virtues, yeah, because of all the good things that he does. And Krishna is called Leela Purushottam. Yeah, and you know how Krishna's whole life has gone. If you can say, it's more like a play, an act, rather than really being so serious.
Let us go ahead and define both those words, Maryada and Leela, because those are beautiful words. So what is Maryada? Maryada is, best as I understand it, it is limits. You know, it's like keeping in mind what the proper limits are. And Leela is, I think, directly translates into play. So there is a deep playfulness in Krishna, which is all pervading. And there is a deep kind of limit kind of thinking of saying, what is the right, what exactly is the right thing to do in this context? And I will do that and only that. That's how I understand Maryada and Leela. What do you think?
Yeah, so what Maryada is talking about is Maryada is staying within the limits of your dharma.
Yes.
Not just limits like a boundary,
Right.
but within the limits of your dharma, whereby you're not attached or deluded by your desires and stuff like that. So you are situated in your dharma, yeah, and you're not being pulled by the peripheral, if you could call it. But what happens is with the world, yeah, you'll interact with the peripheral, but you will keep within the limits of your own dharma, and you will ask yourself, what is the right thing to do before even moving a step. And it is said that Rama would not kill, yeah, even the smallest of insects without a reason. Like that's how much maryada he has. That's how much he is staying within the limits of his dharma.
Coming at it from another angle, I think of Ram as the epitome of karma yoga, and Krishna as being the epitome of bhakti yoga. You know, like he's full of love, you know, that his entire being and his entire interaction with people is just is devotion based. And whereas for Ram, it is karma based. What's the right thing to do? Is that a fair way of describing it?
Yeah, we could say that. And we can see that in the names as well, because karma yoga is always done by its limits of dharma. You cannot go out of the limits using, because if you're in karma yoga, if that's your basic principle, then you cannot allow yourself to be deluded by bhakti or to done all that. Yeah. But on the other side, Krishna is Leela Purushottam, which means play or act. And we can see in his life, certainly, like, you see, he doesn't have a problem even stealing the butter from the gopis. Like, there's no problem in that. And he doesn't have a problem in doing Ras Leela with the gopis. Yeah. So it is that profoundness whereby Rama had only one wife. He was dedicated to one wife, who was Sita. Krishna could have 16,108 wives, to be exact. Yeah, and that was not a problem for Krishna, because he was based on that fundamental quality of love. Yeah? If somebody loves him, he loves in reverse. Yeah, that's it. Like if Arjuna loves Krishna, Krishna will shower all the love onto him. And you see how the lives are totally different. Yeah? But still, somebody in Indian culture can bow down to Rama and bow down to Krishna as well. Yeah? And it is so different perspectives, so much different perspectives of life, still they're accepted. Yeah?
Absolutely. That's a great example of how the Indian philosophy regards the different paths as being all equivalent. You know, these are all avatars of Vishnu, and one of them is approaching one way and the other one is approaching another way. Wonderful. All right, let's move to number 32. Ambika, could you go ahead and read? Give me just a second. Let me go ahead and unmute. Hold on. Just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
Of the creations, O Arjuna, I am the beginning and the end, and also the middle. Among sciences and philosophies, I am spiritual knowledge. The dialectic of the dialecticians am I.
Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
Sarganamadirantascha madhyam chaivahamarjuna adhyatma vidya vidyanam vada pravadatamaham. Sargana, meaning of all the creation that you see. I am the start, I am the middle, and I am the end. So previously we can see that Krishna had put out in verse 20 something about in the same lines, but we'll look at the subtle difference between both of them. So in verse 20 he says, Ahamadischa madhyam cha bhutanam anta eva cha. Out of all the beings, yeah, I am the start, I am the middle, and I am the end. And here he's saying, out of all creation, I am the start, I am the middle, and I am the end. So there, what we can see is not just at the start he was there, but even before the start he was there. Bhutanam Adi in verse 20. It's meaning that I was there even before all that, or any living thing was made, or anything. So I was there before everything, and I will be there after everything. And I am there while everything is going on. What Krishna is pointing out here in verse 32 is just exactly at the start. That means creation, I am. Yeah? Before, the point in verse 20 is just being before. But the point here in 32 is being creation itself and being destruction itself, and then being the sustainer himself. I am everything. If you want to think of me, now you see what Krishna here is doing. He is like about the 10th step in the staircase, and then he's pointing to the 100th step. Look at it. Can you see it? Yeah. Can you see me in everything? Like in creation, in the creative power? Can you see me in the sustaining power? Can you see me in the destructive power? And those powers are so subtle that it's really hard to see the ultimate within them. Like we can accept intellectually that the ultimate is there within, but to accept with the wholeness of your being, like just to be able to grasp it, not intellectually, but to be able to experience it is at another level. Knowing that even in the sustainment, the ultimate is there, then you can't do anything wrong to any other being, or even to the world. Like you just can't do anything wrong, because you, like, the ultimate is within you, the ultimate is also outside you in the sustaining force. How can, because it's not just that the ultimate is within you, like you are the ultimate. Yeah? It is your swabhava, it is your intrinsic quality to be. Now how can you as the ultimate do something wrong to yourself? Not possible at all. Yeah? And that is what you're supposed to see here, that within the whole world, whether it's any being, living or non-living, if you can see the life force within everything, even though it's a stone, even though it's just a mountain, yeah, even though it is a tree, and it is so, like, you know, in a way it is such an integral part of the culture, whereby if you see like Govardhana, which is in Mathura, like people revere to it, they worship Govardhana. It's like, how can you worship a non-living thing, like a non-living being? It's not even living. But Govardhana as a mountain, if you can see the ultimate within, or Pipala or Tulsi as a tree, if you can see the ultimate within, if you can see the life force within the tree, that which enables it to grow, not just the water or the soil that it's using to grow, but that which enables it to grow, that life within. And that's what Krishna wants to point to.
Wonderful.
It's really so much abstract, like it's really like finding a needle in the haystack. But if you can find it, then you've found it. Like that's, you've known reality.
I'll just add one more thing. This idea of beginning, middle, and end is a very core part of thinking, of the Indian thinking. And it is really captured beautifully in the idea of Trimurti. So you have Brahma, you have got Vishnu and Mahesh. They are Trimurti, so they are depicted as one being with three heads. So they are different at the same time same. So that way of thinking where that things go through cycles, they have beginning, middle, and end, yet all of it is one. So that kind of thinking of it in terms of three and one at the same time, this is very much of the way in which like Trinity idea works, of having three different things, each of them doing something and each of them related to one another. But when you look at them as a whole, when you begin to understand them, you see the oneness in the three. It's a core part of Indian thinking. Please go ahead.
Adhyatma Vidya Vidyanam. So out of all the types of study, whatever you can find, I am Adhyatma Vidya. Now, Adhyatma Vidya, break it up. Adhi, Atma, Vidya. So those are three words put into a compound word. Adhi means inside. Atma means you, yourself. And Vidya means knowledge. So the knowledge about yourself as you are within, as you are, like knowing who you are intrinsically, that is like Adhyatma Vidya. And normally, you see, we talk about Atma, like we can talk about any other thing in the world. We say we have to learn about the Atma, or we have to study about the Atma, or we have to think about the Atma. But what actually is that when you experience Atman, or you experience yourself, who you are, it is not an object of knowledge. What it is who you are. It is the seer of knowledge. It is the receiver of knowledge that you're going to know. It is the receiver of every sense from the outside that you're going to know about. It is totally the opposite of any other study or of any other worldly philosophy that you're going to talk about. What it is about, yeah, sure.
Here also I want to make the point, again, this is the three things. This is Atma, knowing itself, right? So it is at the same time the seer, it is seeing. What it is seeing is Atma itself, and the process of seeing it, the consciousness, that also is Atma. So it's like the unity of the seer, the seen, and the sight itself, all seen as one. Go ahead.
Yes, and that Adhyatma Vidya, I am, out of all types of knowledge you can get. So that knowledge, and there is a story about Adhyatma Vidya in the Upanishads. So Shvetketu, his father sends him to Gurukul, we can say a school in today's modern terms. So they send him to the Gurukul at the age of around 8, because normally that was the time they used to send to Gurukul. And he comes back at the age of around 24. Now, when he comes back, his father sees that he has this subtle ego within himself, that he's boasting around, that I know whatever is supposed to be known. And yet his father thinks that if he really truly knows, then he should know that ego is something that is not part of him. Like he should have known his true self if he truly knows. Then what his father does is he asks him a question. Do you know everything that is supposed to be known? Then Shvetketu says, like in his boastful way, yes, I know everything that is supposed to be known. I've gone to Gurukul and my guru has taught me everything that is supposed to be known. I know all the types of vidyas. I know all the types of karas. Everything I know. And then his father asks him, Do you know that one thing? After knowing that one thing, everything else is known. And then Shvetketu says, no, no, I don't know that. I know everything, but I don't know that one thing. After knowing that one thing, everything else is known. And then Shvetketu's father tells him, then go back to Gurukul, you still do not know everything. Yeah? And Shvetketu then becomes humble, and then he asks his father that, what is that one thing? After knowing that one thing, you know everything. And that is the main context here, that if you know yourself, that is Indian culture. If you know yourself, then you know everything that is to be known. If you know every other thing, you do not know everything, because you may know physics or you may know chemistry, but you don't know everything else. Now, in the terms of knowing yourself, yes, you will not know everything in that term, that you'll know chemistry, English, you'll know French, or every language. You will not know everything in that context. But what the Upanishad is certainly trying to say here is, when you know yourself, you'll have the contentment of knowing everything. You'll have that experience that you know. And when you know, like when a tree has a fruit, or has, like, it is fruited and it's filled with fruits, what happens is it bows down, like it becomes humble rather than being straight up. The same should happen with any person who receives knowledge, who receives Gyan. What should happen is, when you receive knowledge, you should become humble. You should bow down. That is true knowledge. When you know yourself truly, then you bow down to the ultimate, like, which is within you, which is everywhere. But you're not bowing down in a way. It is not like showing that I am weak in front of everyone else. Normally, that's how we view it. Like, if I bow down to anyone, then I am the weaker one. But what happens with Adhyatma Vidya? You are the strongest, and you can bow down. Like, you have the most knowledge, and you can bow down. It's not that you fear any other thing. It's not that you are weak, but you are the strongest, and you have realized that the ultimate is flowing, and you also want to flow with the ultimate. And flowing cannot mean standing upright. Flowing can only come with bowing down. That is what Adhyatma Vidya means. That is what knowing yourself means. Rather than just knowing yourself, and how we view any other Vidya or any other knowledge is by, like, having a big stand on your knowledge. Like, if you know, and you'll keep your stand on it. You'll not bow down in front of anyone else about that knowledge. But what happens with Adhyatma Vidya, totally opposite with any other knowledge, is that the stronger you get, or the more knowledge you get, the more you just bow down to the floor.
Wow.
You want to say something?
Yes, folks, what I want to do is I want to open it up for any comments and questions, because I think we can incorporate questions and comments as we go along. So let's go with Joe, followed by David. Joe.
So it's the knowledge of self is the only thing that can bring us to the center, to the core, to who we are. It's not any kind of I don't know, theoretical knowledge, academic knowledge, nothing like that. It's just the knowledge of ourself, or which is our Atman, right? And so that is the only way we can kind of get to the core, and that's the higher form of knowledge. And I have like kind of a personal, but it's on follow-on question.
Can I go ahead and respond to this one, and then you can ask?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So the way in which this is working is that it is Atma. You're absolutely right. It is knowledge of Atma. But in Indian tradition, Atma and Brahma are the same. So you're looking at principles of existence and of consciousness. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at your own core. So both kind of principles of existence and consciousness. And that is distinguished from knowledge of particular things. So put it in terms of the Tao, it is knowing about one of these 10,000 things, or even 1,000 of these 10,000 things. That's one kind of knowledge. And understanding of the Tao, which is operating throughout nature and throughout you. So that is the distinction that is being made. Go ahead.
That's excellent, because it gets into universals and particulars.
Yes, exactly,
So,
exactly. What we're saying is that what it is saying is that focus on the universals,
right.
things that are operative everywhere. And again, distinguishing from the Western context, usually when people say universals, they are focusing mostly on universal principles of the physical world. Here it includes the universal principles of consciousness as well.
And this directly relates to what our conversation was on transcendentalism the other night, and how, so we were talking about goals, like, and things along those lines, and how that, like, those are even though that's a practical knowledge that's based on particulars, it's coming from our universals. So like our goals should be coming from our universals. And then that's kind of the why as to what you're doing, why you're doing something.
Right. Very, very good connection. So let me put it, let me try to phrase it in my way to tell me if it makes sense. So the external goals are all about in these 10,000 things. See, it's wonderful to be able to know both Tao, Gita, and the Bible, because we can use terminology from different things to, in some cases, it is easier than the others. So you can keep changing the terminology. But it is about goals. As we're talking about, the distinction I was making was exactly what you're saying. There are goals that you have regarding the 10,000 things of saying, I need to move this from here to there. So those are all goals in the periphery. The kind of goal that these people are talking about, the Indian philosophy is talking about, is saying that the ultimate kind of principle is within you, and trying to understand it and trying to understand its nature and acting in accordance with that. Having this dhyan, single-minded focus and devotion and seeking of the core of you as being the purpose, as being the ultimate purpose, of which all other purposes are instantiation. So it's not either or. You are doing things in the world. Like Rama is doing a whole bunch of things in the world, but he's doing it from this inside out. He's being true to the deepest principle of himself, and he's taking action in consequence of it. So that's how I would put it.
That's excellent. And just one kind of quick question. I don't know if this is off base, but it would be in line. You'd mentioned in the past that in Indian culture, knowledge and education are the most important thing. Is that rooted in this somehow? Like, is this?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it comes from. I mean,
right,
this is because it is regarded that, it's regarded almost sacred. Like, even if people who are not religious, they consider, of course, knowing is sacred. That's what you do. I mean, the way they would not even use the word sacred. Say, of course, that's what you do. And of course, that's the most important thing. What else would be more important?
More important than eating.
Was that?
It's more important than eating. Like
You wouldn't
literally.
even bring it there. Of course it's more, of course it's important. So like they wouldn't even think of eating as a comparison also. It's like, what are you comparing about?
Yeah, no.
So that's how, so there is this profound respect for knowledge in the Indian context, because traditionally the knowledge is the knowledge of the Atma, the core of you, the most important part of you. So all the glory that is attached to your center is attached to the pursuit of knowledge. All right.
Thank you.
Let's next up is David. Wait a minute, Yogeshwar, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. If you want to add anything, just go ahead. You can raise your hand like this, and so that I know. Okay. David.
Yes, thanks. It's a very interesting verse to me, that it has many layers to it regarding the entire proposal of the yogas. I mean, as you mentioned very astutely about the Trimurti gods that are implied in that very first section of both Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But I'm also seeing that maybe I'm reading too much into it, but this interesting concept of that first statement about creator, maintainer, destroyer as being action, which could be related to karma yoga. Then you have the knowledge that I am related to jnana yoga, and then the argument, which might be considered emotional, as bhakti yoga. And then the statement of the first one, that I'm the creator of all creation. So again, this is the beginning. Knowledge, I am spiritual knowledge, the maintainer, sustainer in the middle, and then I'm the logical conclusion, the end. So again, this entire verse could be looked at as another layer of the creation, maintainer, and destroyer itself, that I'm the beginning, the middle, and the end with each of those different yoga concepts.
Wonderful.
If that makes any sense.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, David. Next up is Charles.
Alt A, there I am. Okay. Yes, I'm coming to your discussion about the distinction between the Tao and the 10,000 things, and the discussion about the sort of the central core versus everything around the periphery, sort of the experiential world versus what's going on in the core of one's Atman. One thing that's always troubled me a little bit about this tradition, and this includes the Buddhist tradition, is the notion of acceptance, that one in delving deeply into one's own inner being and becoming more familiar is not a good word, but more entwined, engaged with being with a capital B, that this can result in a kind of acceptance almost of things that are going on among the 10,000 things out in the world out there that are not very nice.
Sure.
And that would will take what's going on in the Ukraine.
May I respond to it?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
You get my point.
Yes, absolutely. So let me summarize the point. Tell me if I got it, and then I will respond. So what you're saying is that this focus on your core, on your Atma, seems to engender or encourage a sort of passivity towards what is going on in the world outside the 10,000 things, and not paying attention to things that are bad. Okay.
Yes, it can have that tendency.
All right. So let me go ahead and respond to that. So I would say, Bhagavad Gita is being told by Krishna to Arjun in the middle of a war, where the entire Gita is being told to Arjun is saying that focus on your Atma, have love for me, that is God, and do the right thing, which is to kill all these bad people that are in front of you. So it is by no means at all withdrawal from the world. It is a way of integration. There are two ways of thinking about this, both in the Indian tradition and in the Western tradition. I don't know enough about Chinese tradition to make this distinction. In the Western tradition, it appears as the duel between Plato and Aristotle. For Aristotle, the deepest of universal principles are derived from concretes and are applicable to concretes. Spirit animates the matter, and matter supports the spirit. So there is this loop going on between them. Whereas the Platonic idea is that in order to focus on spirit, you have to give up matter. So it's either or. This entire work is very much Aristotelian in that sense. Now, there are versions of Hinduism, and there is a tendency in Buddhism, for example, of being Platonic. But Bhagavad Gita is not Platonic. This is God. This is war. This is war. Go ahead. A quick follow-up. Go ahead.
I have read the Gita before, and I was always troubled because it seemed to me that at the very beginning, when Arjuna is talking about his distress at having to go out and kill these people who are his relatives, right? They're not unknown people. The so-called enemy are his kinsmen, and he finds a great deal of difficulty in accepting that he has to do this. There's a kind of a moral dilemma that he's facing. And,
sure.
and I never,
I always just put it as a question, Charles. Go ahead.
I never really came to grips with Krishna's response that this is what you have to do. This is sort of the way it is, and this is what you have to do. Sure. I always felt like Arjuna was not really being answered very well.
Sure. Let me go ahead and answer that. I'm going to use, there is a gentleman called Nilesh Marik who has spoken here before, and he has these brilliant observations about the nature of Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to, and these are his points. So I'm going to make 4 points about the nature of Bhagavad Gita. The first, and this is very appropriate because this actually it's a way of understanding the context of this. Because what happens is that by default, people bring all kinds of different contexts to it. So it's important to understand the context of the work itself. So the first point to understand is that Bhagavad Gita is taking place in the middle of a war. Okay, cannot forget that. Cannot forget that. These are two of the largest armies, most powerful armies, standing there ready to go at each other, killing each other. Okay, so it's midst of a war. It's tremendously intense physical situation. All the philosophy is being done in that context. It takes about 2 hours for Krishna to say what he has to say. That's the context. That's point number 1. Second, the way it is being delivered is very relevant it's very important to understand. Arjun is saying, Arjun, you have to realize he's a greatest warrior of the time by far. Okay. And he's in a position where he realizes that all his ideas, all his emotions, all his intuitions have all failed him. Everything has failed him. He's saying, I don't know what to do. I cannot kill Drona. I can't kill Bhishma. I don't know what to do. Okay, so it's a person. Normally what happens is that people have all these ideas Here, all of those ideas have been disintegrated. Another part about the context is Krishna and Arjun are soulmates. For each of them, the other person is the most important person in the world. Arjun, Krishna says at one point in Mahabharata that if I were to put all my relatives on one side of a scale and Arjun on the other, Arjun will win. It's that important to him. So he's presenting Gita as a conversation with Arjun, tailored to him, giving him multiple things, not only patiently answering every one of his queries, but actually being delighted as Arjun explores his way out of his predicament. So it's a conversation between friends delivered personally to one particular individual. Next, it's not a static scripture. Krishna never tells Arjun what to do. He's saying it's called Bhagavad Gita. It's the song of the God. So, and Krishna is very explicit about it. He's saying, look, I'm saying these things to you. Okay, that's not what you should listen to. What you need to do is that you need to connect to your core, Brahma, which is in you, and act from that on your own. Okay, that is very profound. So he's inviting, though he is God. Okay, understand it. Krishna is God. He's saying, don't listen to me. He's saying, I'm telling you something, use it to get to Brahma within you, Atma within you. That's what matters. Not words that somebody else says, even though it be Krishna, but connect to your own, the Brahma within you, Atma within you, and act from that. And the last thing here, which is very profound, is that the view of what is possible to human beings that is being presented in Bhagavad Gita is so exalted. What it is saying is that you can be God. More fundamentally, that you are God, that you have just forgotten. That's what you are. So it is showing an enormous potential for what human beings can do. So it's a completely different worldview. And it requires tremendous amount of work to grasp it from modern context. I think both in the modern Indian context and the modern Western context. Thank you. Next up is going to be, give me a second here. Let me move this. Next up is going to be Allison. Allison. Allison, you can go ahead and unmute. Let's see, I don't know where Allison is. Okay. Allison, are you having difficulty unmuting? Okay, I don't see her. Okay, maybe she might have stepped aside. Next up is Jason. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I noticed here, here use the word saga, right? And the translation is creation or manifestations. So, and then later on talk about the start, end, and the middle. I will fairly assume Indian creation is different than Judaism creation. So it's not a big bang. So is that the creation is a continuous process in the Indian concept? That's my question.
Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
Yes, so how creation and destruction are viewed in Indian context are creation happens continuously in a way that, because when something is destroyed, that destruction creates something new. It may be new energies, or it may be even, because when you break, like when you put pages together, you create a book. Yeah. When you destroy the book, you have pages again. Like that's a creation of its own now. Like you've destroyed the book, but the pages are now there. So in that way, creation and destruction are like, they are part of nature. They're not like it happens once and then it's done, and destruction will happen at the end, done with it. But it is like a mode of sustaining. If you want to sustain the world, creation and destruction are inevitable. You have to have them even in the smallest of views, because what we know even right now is, even the book that I'm holding right now is not the same I was holding yesterday, because it has faded out even a bit. As we know, like books will fade out in 1,000 years. Yeah, this book that I'm holding right now will become so faded out, it won't be readable even. The pages will tear out themselves. So even each and every second that is happening, but it is so minute, we cannot know it right now. So creation and destruction are part of sustenance. They're not out of sustenance. Like they're not very much different from sustenance. They are part and parcel of it.
Let me answer it, and then Yogeshwar, correct me if I'm wrong. What Jason I think is asking is that, is there like a Big Bang? Is there like some instance where everything gets created before there was nothing, and then there is something? Is that how it is in Indian thought?
Yeah, and one thing I would like to point out is Indian thought is cyclical, as we all know. Yeah. Now, so what happens in the circle is you can never ask what the first point of the circle was, because if you take one point of the circle as the start, just before it will be the end of the circle. So a circle has no end and no start. So it's the same thing when you ask in Indian culture, is there a start and an end? It's like asking for the start and end of the circle.
Yeah,
it can be anywhere and it's everywhere. So that's how it's viewed.
Yeah, so I think yeah, so Jason, I think your answer is that it's eternal.
I think I got my answer.
Okay,
very well.
very good.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
very
good. Let's see.
The destruction and the creation paradigm, the paradox is very good idea. So
wonderful.
Yeah, depend on how you look at it, right? Just like tear up the book is the destruction of book by creation of page. So it's very different concept. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Allison's question is, what is the relationship between focusing on the core and purification of the body after death?
So purification after death, that's what they ask. Yes.
Yeah, Yogeshwar, the rule is you don't have to take any questions. You can take whichever questions you want to talk about. Okay.
Yes. So what I would like to point out is one point of purification, just in general, is that focusing on the core so much depends on purification, because right now we are, even though we want to, we try to, we have a desire to, we are not able to concentrate on the core 100%. We're not able to do any action from the center of our being. We're able to do actions with our mind, with our body, that's fine. But from the center of our being, like I know I'm doing the action from the core, that's not happening right now. So there are all these clouds that are in between. And those clouds need fading away, they need purification in a way. So purifying in the Indian context, it's not that there's anything bad that you need to fade away. There's nothing bad in it. But purification in the Indian culture is like removing out the clouds so that the sun can shine out. That's all in purification. So when you ask about after death, purification after death, so in a way, how you take it in Indian culture is that purification, what it signifies is that should be done, because what death is taken as in Indian culture is you separating from the body. That's death, basically. If you separate from the body right now, like if you can say, I am not the body, I am something else, then basically you are dead. In quotes, you are dead. Yeah? So that purification that is done after death signifies that which should have been done if you had left the body with your own wish. If you had left the body even before dying, and leaving the body means separating yourself from the identity of the body. That, if it happens before death, then that's the real purification, I would say.
Okay, I'm going to read a poem from Gitanjali, and just a plug, we're going to be featuring Gitanjali in the Monday meetups. So this is, I don't remember the number of this, but it says, life of my life, I shall ever try to keep my body pure, knowing that thy living touch is upon all my limbs. I shall ever try to keep all untruths out of my thoughts, knowing that thou art that truth which has kindled the light of reason in my mind. I shall ever try to drive all evils away from my heart and keep my love in flower, knowing that thou hast thy seat in the inmost shrine of my heart. And it shall be my endeavor to reveal thee in my actions, knowing it is thy power that gives me strength to act. So this is Tagore. I love Gitanjali. I recommend it very highly because it captures this philosophy better in poetry that I've ever seen. So, all right, let's continue. Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
Yes. So, Vadaha pravadatamaham. I am Vada. So, in Indian philosophy, there is a difference between, I'll first say the words in Sanskrit, then I'll explain them. So, there is Vada, there is Vitanda, and there is Jalpa. So, those are the three different types of debates that you can have, or intellectual back and forth that you can have. So the first Vada, shortly how I would put it is, two people are having a debate or they're conversing, but they want to know the truth. They want to take their intellect towards the truth. They want to find out together how they can move towards the truth. What Vitanda means? Vitanda means that I will keep on my best. Yeah, you keep on your best, and we shall have an unending dialogue between ourselves. That's how it is viewed. And then Jalpa, what Jalpa is I do not have any theory in mind. Maybe I have, but I will not show it to you. What I will do is, whatever you say, even though I agree with it, I will try to cut it with debate. Like that's what I will do. I'll try to cut it with any theories or any words I have. That is what basically Jalpa means. So out of those three, I am Vada. I am that intellectual conversation that happens between people, two people or a group of people, that is towards the truth rather than one's own perspective or just cutting out another person's perspective. I am that towards the truth. And one example I could give, like, this is the most famous story that is told about Vada, Vitanda, and Jalpa. That there was this, it was called, I don't remember the name intrinsically, but the name or Devdutt, let's say, he was watching a revered Pandit walking on the streets, yeah. And what happened is it started raining, and then the priest, like the Pandit, who is the highest priest, he started running towards his home. And then Devdutt, while he was seated in his house watching through the window, he called on to the priest and said, "Why are you running? Like, God has showered so much love onto you, and you don't want to bathe with it." So the priest, because he was so much like, oh, now my image in society, so now I have to walk slowly now, because Devdutt has said something like this. And so he walks slowly towards his home, and he comes all wet. And then he gets a bit ill. He has a fever and stuff. So he is seated at his window in his house. And then on another day, like 2-3 days afterwards, he sees Devdutt walking, and then rain falls, yeah? And Devdutt starts running. So the Pandit from his house stops Devdutt and says, "Why are you running right now? Yeah? God is showering so much love onto you, so you should also walk slowly." So what Devdutt says is, "Oh, actually what I'm doing right now is, God is showering so much love. I don't want to put my foot on that love, so I'm running away." So you see, what is done there is that person who is Devdutt is trying to run away from situations. He has he's giving the best advice to other people, but when it comes upon him, he uses his intellect to find a way through, and justify what he is doing. So that is not Vada. That is just saying that you are wrong, I'm right always. And another point is having your own views and not accepting another person's, even when you know that the other person may be true, like he may be right. So in all that is the wrong thing. What the right thing is Vada. When you accept what the truth is, and then you also do what the truth is, not just accepting intellectually, because in today's world, there's so many people who will accept intellectually, but then putting into practice with your own daily routine, that will become the hard part now. And that it's inclusive in Vada. When you accept the truth as it is, you live the truth as it is. You don't just accept it intellectually. And until you do not live it out, then it's only intellectual. It's not part of your life. It's only when you accept truth as part of your life that you can accept it totally.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. So folks, if you guys have any comments or questions on it, you can go ahead. What I want to do is I want to briefly talk about the Tao Te Ching meetups. Now that Jason is here and Joe is here and Evanik is here, and there are lots of people who participate regularly in the Tao meetup. So Jason, I have a couple of things. I was talking to Joe and Evanik yesterday, and we want to actually celebrate the completion. So we were thinking of about 2 or 3 meetups in that. So firstly, I have to say that Joe thinks that because Tao is eternal, the Tao meetups have to be eternal and they have to continue. And he's using all kinds of mathematical techniques like Zeno's paradox, which have been discredited, by the way, by calculus, to keep it going. But what I want to do is I want to come up with a series of proper, really good ways of bringing things together, because we've done so much work and we want to cap it with some things. So I had 2 ideas, and I think Evanik had one more. So I want to put it all to you and see what you think. So one is that we have to do the third part of going through the remaining of your translations in one sitting. So that's number one. Number two, I want to get everybody's, what did they get from the entire series? So just get feedback of saying, okay, what did you learn from the series? And have a whole bunch of people talking. The third idea that I think that was Evanik's idea of saying, read your favorite of the verses. So people will come and share the verses. And I was thinking of, that's all right, Joe. I got this. So those are the 3 things we were thinking of. Give me just a second. I want to make sure that everything is unmuted here. Hold on. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Jason, what do you think about that?
I think it's all of this idea are very good. For sure, we need to finish the third part. I think that's for sure.
Yes.
And then I think it's like everybody share what your favorite, and then talk about you learned. And I also personally, I also like to know everyone what's the difference between you read Tao Te Ching and after you read the Tao Te Ching. Okay, so I can quickly share my experience. Is I read it in my young age. I don't know it's influenced me until I talk to somebody. I say, oh, okay, we have such big difference. Okay, so
yeah. We will, so we'll definitely do that. So that sounds like a good idea, right? So we'll continue to do. I want to keep Tuesdays for now. So maybe three more Tuesdays after you guys finish, whether it is you finish this time or the next time, whatever. We will just continue with that. All right. Are you okay? Perfect. So we'll continue with that. So Joe, the Tao meetups are not, everybody was crying, Jason. The Tao is going to get over. How is this possible?
It's never over, because remember, I read many years ago, I still read it. And,
yes.
And when I do it and talk to different people, and like everybody, a lot of people just first time read it. And then your response also give me some idea. So I think that's pretty interesting. And you don't have to take so seriously, and you just read it, and then any kind of response would be wonderful. I think.
And the beautiful thing is that the way it works is that it works on you. Like the way I've seen it working is that I have to let it wash over me again and again. And every time you pick up something, every time it remains with you in your subconscious, and you see something going on and you say, oh, you know what? That's what is going on. So it allows you, it gives you a perspective. It's very deep how it works. And it mostly works at a kind of subconscious level to kind of just very gently turn you a certain way. So I think that's wonderful. So thank you very much. All right. So let's see, folks, do you have any final comments on this? Because I don't want to start a new verse. We are getting so much from this. Go ahead, Jason.
Are we on 32? On 33?
Yes. You know what has happened is that this chapter 10. To give you an example of like how quickly can things change. Okay, is when I read chapter 10, and I read the Naneshwar's commentary also, I thought that we would be going through this in one meetup. Okay, but what we've been doing is that Yogeshwar is doing such a remarkable job of showing the entire context of each of those, because there's all these stories and that is building up. So we've just finished, today we finished 31 and 32.
Oh, not 33 yet.
No, not 33 yet.
Oh, yeah,
And so
okay.
we'll start from 33 1 week. And folks, I did a presentation for our poetry group on the Singing with God, an impressionistic overview of Bhagavad Gita. And many people seem to like it. So I would recommend it as an overview of it. It's kind of, it is impressionistic. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, no, that it was excellent. And, but it's about maybe what, 40 minutes into it, if they want to go right to it.
No, I've separated it out.
Oh, you separated it
Yeah,
out
so
altogether.
the link that I put, it just starts with the presentation. So
Oh,
I have
that's great.
put both of them separately, the whole
Okay.
meetup and this part separately.
Oh, okay, good. Well, then that's the main thing. I wanted people to know that it was coming.
Wonderful, wonderful. So folks, one of the things I want to do is to work on the sound. Sound. Yogeshwar, do you need to? What's your situation in terms of time?
Today specifically?
Today?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm not constrained.
Sure. Then I want to talk a little bit about sound, at least get the discussion started of the role of sound in the Indian culture. So can you go ahead and talk a little bit about how sound operates in Indian Indian philosophy, Indian culture, Indian way of operation?
Yes, so sound, it is what in India the greatest of sages found out. Yeah? Basically, what they found in the silence is that there is the sound of the whole Brahman. There is that sound that is going on. And then they tried to integrate that sound into daily life so that it's easily accessible to Indian culture. What happened is they found this profound way, whether it is through music, whether it's through chanting a mantra, or whether it is through one specific syllable, whatever helps you. Now, there are three different types here because one specific syllable will mean something like Om. And then chanting a mantra would have a group of syllables, a fixed group of syllables. And then a song would be totally different. It will be a group of syllables, but then it has this musical tone with it. It has this emotional tone with it. And all these, whichever helps you to get to Brahma, whichever helps you to get to the ultimate, it is what you can use. And these were given as tools in Indian culture that use what is your favorite. And so many people, like those who are in the Bhakti tradition, they took up devotion, like the one with songs within it, within the whole culture. So Bhakti right now, it has so much of songs devoted towards the ultimate. And what the type of songs that were initially made, like created, were Indian classical music. And that, if you look at Indian classical music, it was not for anything in this world. It was not towards anything in this world. It was not only an emotion for the world. It was an emotion for being. It was an emotion for the life force. And that was transforming totally. And then when we come to mantra chanting, so there's a group of words that has a specific number of syllables. And that number of syllables, it is either 6, 8, 16, or 24. That's how it's grouped in mantra tradition. If you want, so The one with 24 is the Gayatri mantra. It's the longest. And then the one with 8 is called the Ashtakshar mantra. It's also very much known. Now, what happens there is you are trying to tune yourself to resonate at the same sound level that is occurring in the world, in the whole Brahmanda. That's what you're trying to do, basically. When you concentrate on one type of sound, what you understand is, I am creating the sound. And then what happens is you're creating the sound, and then let the sound be. And then listen to what is happening. Because when you're listening, you're not only listening to sound. When you're listening, you're not making any sound. You're listening at whatever sound is being made. So when you're listening, what happens is you listen to every subtle sound that is, even without you making a sound. And that is really profound. Like when you're just listening. Even when if we have an opportunity, if we're walking like in nature among trees, if we can only listen to the leaves that are touching each other and the wind that is flowing through the trees, it is a totally different experience rather than us making the sound and then listening to it. So that listening to the sound was also integrated into the culture. And then the specific Om chanting, which is only one syllable. Like Om is, it may have 2 vowels and a consonant, but in one way, it is only one syllable. When you pronounce it, it's Om. And what happens there, because it's only one syllable, it is not taken as a mantra. What it is not taken, because mantra must have multiple syllables. Om is only one syllable, ekaksharam, as we have seen in Gita, ekaksharam. And that ekaksharam, meaning one syllable, it is so profound that it is mimicking, because we can't really know what the sound of the world is, the sound of the silence is. What Om does, it tries to mimic the sound of the silence. So that when you get to know the sound of the silence, you know that, yes, it is this. Because you may have hallucinations as well. You don't know. Yeah, you may be hearing some sounds that are not there. Maybe your ears have a problem. So how do you know that I've gotten to the sound of silence? So they gave you a tool. Use Om. It is really near to the sound of silence. And when you hear the sound of silence, then you'll know that Om is really significant in manifesting that unmanifest.
Thank you. Let me do one thing. I want to bring my diagram up, and I want to talk a little bit about sound. I think this is, Yogeshwar, can you see the diagram?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. All right. So what I want to do is, I think this is a very, very deep point. Okay. So I'm going to try something. The oldest form of Indian classical music is called Dhrupad. And Dhrupad actually directly talks about, these core ideas. Okay, so I want to, I want to show you, Yogeshwar, you can see the mouse?
Yes, I can see the cursor.
Very good, very good. So what I want to do is I want to just show you how the sound works, okay? Because like in the West, we use concepts, and in India, the concepts, the word and the sound is all mixed together. to fully express. This is part of the scribal culture. I think the West also had that when in the oral culture, the scribal culture. So I'm going to describe the poem first, okay? So this, you can see how deep it is. This is a rag called Purya Kalyan, which is used to really pray to God, of really asking God to come. You know, it is all about that, okay? So it says Anahata Nada. Anahata means unmanifested sound. Joe, can you type in the English words that I'm saying? Anahata. You don't need to type in Anahata. That will be difficult to pronounce. But if anybody in India, anybody who can speak Indian, and if you could type in the Hindi words, Yogeshwar, would you be able to do it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
in
you can type
English,
in,
Lipi, yeah.
Yeah, just in English only. In English alphabet, just Anahata, and then let's do the meanings of them, so you can see how it is. And I want to give you a flavor of it. Now I can get somebody who can sing to do this, but it is very difficult to get them to do it at this pace, so you can understand what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to try it myself. So it says, it starts with Anahata Nada. Anahata is unmanifested. Nada is sound. Okay, so Anahata Nada. So you can type in unmanifested sound, and then Yogeshwar, after that you can type in the English meaning, which is unmanifested sound. Okay, so it's saying that that's what it is about. Yeah, that's perfect. Yogeshwar types the Hindi version, Joe types the English version. Okay, and what it does is that it tries to capture in music what each of these concepts are. Okay, so Anahata Nada, Upajo Jagame. Upajo means was created. So was created. Jagame is in the world, was created in the world. Upajo Jagame. Okay, so you can see each of these words, how powerful each of these words are. Okay, so far we have only 4 words. Okay. Tako Karu Dhyana. So Tako means so that. Karu means that I do. Dhyana. So Dhyana is concentration. Okay. Maname Ghatame. So in my mind and in my body. Maname Ghatame. So what it is saying is that there is this yellow dot. That is the unmanifested sound. So that it exists, so that I can be focused on it with full devotion, using my mind, this blue, and using my body. Okay. Then the next part of the song. So this is the main thing. And the way it is done is that the singer will sing this part for like 15 minutes, exploring the meaning of it, because you're not singing to the audience. You're singing to God. You're trying to actually capture what this means and what you are planning to do. Okay. Next one is Nada ki sangati so. So that means in the companionship of this sound. Okay, in the companionship of this sound. So I love this word, companionship, sangati. So that means in the companionship of the sound. So that means you're living with this Om, living with this process of Om, like creation, sustenance, and transformation, using your mind, heart, body. So you're living with it continuously. Okay. So Nada ki sangati so. Socha samaja. That means think about and understand. Socha, samaja, sukshma surako, the minutest of notes. So what you're saying is that this unmanifested sound manifests itself in all these 10,000 ways in the most delicate notes. So think about and understand these delicate notes. That means understand all the manifestations, everything about the world, everything about the people. So think about and understand the minutest of notes. Beautiful. Okay. Tako, so that. Shuddhabani, so that your speech or slash expression is pure. Okay, so what you're saying is you're doing this, you're focusing on you're living in the companionship of this sound. So you can think about and understand all of the world, which is all these minutest of notes, so that your expression is pure. So your expression in your mind, in your heart, in your body is pure. Okay, so you can see how profound this is. Okay, and I'm going to give a short demonstration of how it is done. Typically, you would sing this for like 45 minutes. Okay, I'm going to sing it only for 2 minutes to give you an illustration. Let me mute everybody so the sound is as good as possible. Okay. So first we are going to, you can look at it, you can scroll up in the chat and see the words, okay? Anahata nada. Anahata is unmanifested. So you have to capture in notes, unmanifested. And nada is something that you hear. So it has to be something definite, right? So this is like the simple version of it. Na hata nada. So it goes na ta. So it goes, you see all the undulations. And when it comes to nada, nada, so you can see it's a very clear fifth. Nada. And so you're capturing, and they will do these variations for a long time. So now when you're saying upajo, created, what you're trying to do is that you're trying to create like the sunrise, you know, coming out from the dark to the light, and you're trying to capture that when you're saying upajo. So you have to, you're trying to, when you're singing, you're trying to, that's all you're trying to do. You're trying to capture the meaning of these things in notes. So, and so upajo is like, you know, coming out into the world. It's like dawn coming, and jagame is like the stable world that you see. So you have to capture this, and then you have to capture that. So it goes upajo jagame. So again, you can see that it's like a stable note. Jagame upajo jagame. So now this is all describing the, you know, what is, right? Anahata nada upajo jaga me. So it is pointing to this yellow dot. So now he's going to start talking about what do I need to do? So it starts with tako, so that. So there has to be an element of resolve that that's what I'm going to do. Okay. Tako, tako, karu dhyana. So it goes down all the way. So it's like you're trying to get, like, go as deep as possible within yourself. And then you're going to say, me ghata me. So it goes from, like, says, I'm determined to do this. I'm going to go down to the core of me and then say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Okay. So you can see that it is nada ki sangata so. So now he's saying, okay, nada ki sangata so. So he's saying that now he's now focusing on the value that this companionship of nad gives him. So nada ki sangata so cha samaja. So now he's basically kind of entreating himself to say, do the thinking and understanding. So cha samaja sushama swarako. So the smallest of notes. Tako. How tako Shuddha Bani so naha tanada hupajo jagame na tanada. So that's a simple example of how it works. So I want to open it up for any comments. What do you think? You can go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to share. Jason.
Yeah, sorry, I actually have two questions. Okay.
Sure.
First, I'm very curious on the oral tradition. And Indian, as a nation, not say nation, a culture, it's huge, humongous. And I believe one village or one area cannot communicate with the other area in talking. But how does the oral tradition work? When you talk about Om, does that Om, this sound is same sound all over the place? Okay, that in Hindi or in the southern part, are they
Excellent.
use the same syllable? And number two question is,
let Yogeshwar answer it, then we'll come to the number two question. Yogeshwar, what do you think?
Yes, so what Sanskrit does in Indian tradition is keep the best of each and every language. So whichever language that springs out, it is from its mother, which is Sanskrit. And they take the important words that are very important in philosophy and religion from Sanskrit. They'll take the roots from Sanskrit in each and every language that springs out, whether it is in North India or South India, wherever it is. And that helps keep the basic understanding, because if a word is the same in Hindi and in Tamil, which is in South India, or Gujarati, which is in North India, so if it all springs out from Sanskrit, then
sorry, I think there is a problem, Yogeshwar, with your sound. He'll probably come back. Yogeshwar, when you come back, let me know. Okay, maybe you can't even hear. So one point I would say is that that's an excellent question, by the way. I mean, the thing is, India is full of so many languages. It is full of so many cultures. And Hinduism is actually very good at, Yogeshwar, you're back? Yogeshwar, yes, go ahead. Please continue.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay,
so
yeah, you were saying that.
What I was saying is,
go ahead.
Yeah, so every language springs out of Sanskrit. So what happens is every philosophical word or religious word will come out of Sanskrit. They will have a variation, but Sanskrit will be the best. And when Sanskrit is the best, where all the words are taken from Sanskrit, then they will have the same meaning in each and every language in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that, Hinduism by its nature, as I was saying, that there are lots of Indian cultures, lots of Indian languages, and Hinduism somehow, in the way it is structured, it kind of incorporates different parts of the language. So even if that there are some languages which are based very closely on Sanskrit, like for example, the language I grew up speaking, Marathi, is very close to Sanskrit. Kannada is a little bit further away. Tamil is even further away because it has the Dravidian base. It is not part of the Indo-European language. So, but there are few words. But something like Om, those words, the power of them is that they are so simple that Om is a word that is applicable in all languages. People have picked it up because of the cultural reasons. Okay.
So yes, and Om is basically, you see what was, sorry. And what happens is Om is not put in the alphabet in any language. So that's also very profound, whereby because it's not part of the alphabet, you can't change it. If you want to change, you'll change the alphabet, or you'll change how the words in the alphabet are said. But if something is out of the alphabet, it can go through change. Like change will come and it won't change itself. Like Om will remain the same because it's out of the language, it's out of the alphabet in that way.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, my second question would be, I always curious, Yogeshwar, when you read the Gita, I don't know, you are reading as speaking, or reading as singing, or reading as chanting. So that's my question,
Yogeshwar, are you reading, chanting, or singing?
You see, what I would say is, by the name, it is Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna sang this song to Arjuna. That's why I prefer to say that I am singing the song to you. It is the song of God.
Yes. So, Jason, that's an excellent question. I mean, the way I would answer it, go ahead.
So if you read out loud, you will be totally different.
No, that is how you read. If you're reading Sanskrit,
if you speak, that's put a play, okay? And Krishna talk to Arjuna in the daily conversation will not be like this, right?
That's a good, yeah, in a daily conversation, it won't be, but all the scriptures, everything are verses like this that are spoken that are sung exactly the way in which Yogeshwar is singing them. That's the traditional way of reading. That's because
but conversation is not in the same way.
Conversation, I don't know the answer to. I'll have Yogeshwar answer it, because Sanskrit is not a spoken language. It is.
Oh, it's not a spoken language.
Currently, only kind of very tiny fraction of people actually speak. But Yogeshwar would know much more about this, so I will defer to Yogeshwar.
Okay, gotcha.
Yogeshwar, go ahead.
Yes, so previously, like from the start in old ages, Sanskrit was spoken by everyone. Yeah, there was a time where Sanskrit was spoken by everyone. And at that time, it was profound in a way that, everyone would talk in this language and everyone else would understand. Then what happened is there was the Upanishad time, whereby everything was written down. Before, nothing was being written down before. It was only a spoken language. And then Upanishad time came and everything was written down. Then the time for the Puranas came. And what happened is the Upanishads were really hard to understand, and they were only for the intellectuals by this time, because times changed. So the Upanishads were only meant for the intellectuals. And those who could understand those hard words, which by somebody in the bhakti tradition or a normal person, it will be so much logical that it doesn't approach him. Like, it would not make me want to learn those words. So what happened is everything changed in a way that everything was brought towards a common person in the way of verses. Now, what happens with verses is it's very easy to remember if you want to remember something. And it also appeals to your own mind. It appeals to your emotions as well. So you'll have that kind of, I should do it. And that brings the whole religion to the common person rather than just staying for intellectuals. But at the time of the Upanishads, they were meant for common person. So as time changes, the normal need for the common person also changes. And then what happened is, so there were different languages that now evolved. And now what happened is only a small part of India remained speaking Sanskrit. And then what happened is now Sanskrit, because even before, like in the Upanishads, there are no verses. It's only written, like normal language. And then in the Puranas, the verse language comes in. And even in Mahabharata, which is in the same time as the Puranas, the type of language of verses comes in. And then in the time right now, where there are only small groups of people who are speaking Sanskrit, speaking is in normal terms. Like they speak in normal daily life. They do not speak as a verse. But when you want to study something, it's really easy to study and understand what it's trying to say in verses rather than just speaking it out like in normal words. Because what these scriptures have is totally a different dimension, I could say, of spirituality rather than normal spoken language. And it's really easy to grasp a verse. And another aspect I would put to that is that why it is said a song, that Krishna sung this song to Arjuna. It is less about the verses, like singing the verses itself, but it's more about the expression of Krishna, because Krishna is Lila Purushottam. He's the one who acts out. He's the one who plays around. So in that way, because he is also so much familiar with instruments like the flute and singing in a way. Why it's called Bhagavad Gita is less about its verses, because verses are also there in the Puranas, to say, but they're not called songs, they're called scriptures yet. Why this is called Bhagavad Gita still is less because of its verses and how it is supposed to be sung, and more about its expression, like how Krishna expressed it to Arjuna. Krishna's expression itself was like a song rather than a scripture, or rather than just a friendly talk or just talking about something. He said a whole song out to Krishna.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much. That's very different. That's why I call Gita. And the Bible we call scripture. And in Chinese we call Dao De Jing. Okay, that's another concept of, we don't call Dao De Gita, okay, or Dao De scripture. I think that make a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Jing,
Yes, I also wanted to ask.
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead, Yogesh.
I also wanted to ask that Dao De Ching. So what is the meaning of Dao De Ching? Like, you see, Bhagavad Gita has its meaning, like the song that was sung by God, or song that was sung by Ultimate. So what does Dao De Ching mean?
Okay, Dao De, that's another thing, Dao and the De. Okay, Jing, another thing called Jing, including a lot of Confucian teaching, right? They all call this Jing, this Jing, this Jing. Okay, Chinese has the traditional, the silk is invented. So when you make the clothes, you have a vertical and the horizontal. The vertical thing we call Jing, okay? So I think that's I think Jing means logic, okay? So because it's like, they have some teaching like logic, smooth the way. So they call it Jing as a canon, okay? So that's why it called it Jing. If something more logical, the logical, again, is not the same kind of syllogism or the Western kind of logic, means it's something in thinking, something this one. That's called Jing. Okay, so, and later on, Buddhism come in. Okay, and actually they call sutra. Okay, but in Chinese translation also called Jing. Okay, so a lot of Buddhism sutra we also call blah 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 Jing, something like this. Okay.
Wonderful. And Yogeshwar, the Tao is the Tao. So it's the universal principle, and the is the way. The way. So it's the that's why it's Tao, the Jing. I like the Jing. I always love the sounds. Go ahead, Jason. Could you explain to Yogeshwar Tao De as well?
Okay, Dao and the De, that's the two things. Dao is probably the highest. It's not only in the Taoism teaching, right? In Confucius, even in the legalism, in the art of war, okay, everything talk about Dao. Even in today's daily conversation, if you say you have no Dao, that means you are a bad person. Okay, even the robber, the thief, they have their own Dao. So Dao is like Muslim, okay, Islam, okay, it's the highest thing. Okay, so De is the, put this way, similar to Indian concept of a guru. Okay, so basics is virtue. Okay, is your power. Okay, so what the way you practice Dao, they call De. Okay, and later on in today, De have some moral sense, but original probably have no moral sense. It's the way to practice Dao. That's the way I can talk about this.
So I will, if taking liberties of going across different fields, I would say Tao is closest to Brahma. And the is closest to yoga. Yoga is the method, the way, different ways. So it's like Brahma, Yoga. I don't know what to call Jing.
Well, Jing is the book. Everything in the book, then it's a Jing. So I think it's the Brahma and the yoga is a good way to talk about this. So yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah.
Yes. So Brahma, Yoga, scripture or book.
Or one called Gita or something.
but I do like Dao De Jing. Brahma Yoga. I have to say it with the right tones.
But because you are in the oral tradition, so that's why you like to sing it like a
Yes.
Dao.
Yes. Wonderful. All right, Joe, thank you for your patience. Please
Oh
go.
no, I actually even forgot my question was from a while back, so I didn't use the pen and paper, so I forgot. So that was great listening to you guys. So thank you.
Wonderful. All right, folks. So thank you so much. Tomorrow and day after are going to be just amazing meetups. At 11 o'clock tomorrow, Yasuhiko Kimura is going to be here, and he's going to be talking about how to build a holistic civilization that, basically incorporates spirituality fully. And he calls it omnicentric. So that means, and this is very much kind of Indian way of thinking, of saying that each of us has an Atma. So how do we build a civilization which is holistic, which covers all those three axes and is respectful of Atmas of everybody? How do you do that? So that's what it's going to be about. 11 o'clock tomorrow. And then at 3 o'clock on Sunday, Mark Stallman is going to be back, and he's going to be talking about memory and autonomy and subsidiarity. How do you build a society on the right scale, where things are done at the right scale, not too large a level or not too small a level, just the right scale for everything, so that human spirit or human soul can function with autonomy, using all the memory that we have of all of civilization and everything that we have done. All right, so these are just going to be incredible meetups, so don't miss them. I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Bye. And Jason, great you could make it.